Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another community team live Q&A. Sorry for the technical difficulties for those of you who might have been watching this live. We're a bit late in getting started. We apologize. The internet hates us today, and that's okay. We're live now, and yes, so we'll get to any questions you've asked, anything that's in the backlog, the IRC channel, don't worry. And my camera seems to have lost focus. There we go. Don't worry, we'll get to your questions. Feel free to ask anything that you wish, as usual. No topic is off limits.
You might regret that.
Yeah, I cringe saying that. Anyway, so Daniel and I are fresh off of UOS last week, and so a big thank you again to all of those of you who participated. I had a wonderful time. It was an excellent week. I was exhausted at the end of each day, which is how you know it was good. And so for those of you who might have missed any of those sessions, if you go to summit.ubuntu.com, you can take a look and see all the wonderful video sessions we had and the different tracks and what's available to you. You can also just watch the summary session, which is the last session on UOS, and get a sort of preview of what you might have missed, and that might help direct what videos you want to go see. So Daniel, is there anything else you want to share about this week or what's going on in Ubuntu?
Sure. No, just about the online summit, I was going to ask which of the sessions you liked best, or how do you feel this online summit was different than others?
Sure. I'm a little biased because, of course, I helped run a track. I helped run the show and tell track. And thank you again to the other wonderful track leads who volunteered. They made my job really easy, so it was wonderful. Thank you, Alan, Svetlana, and Marco. Wonderful. So I'm a little biased towards that. I really enjoyed the flavor sessions. Specifically, the Kubuntu one was really awesome to see. So Oviedo and Aaron and I think Rick. Thank you very much, and Jonathan as well, I believe, was in that session. Thank you to all of you who were in that session, and for the audience who participated. That was lovely. There's a lot of really cool and interesting demos. So the Unity 8 demo I also really enjoyed. Michael Zanetti showed off some advanced windowing stuff, not just windowing mode, but switching between windows and that sort of thing. So that's nice to see. Things you want in a desktop. So yeah, I'd say demos were definitely up there. Besides that, trying to think what other tracks. Oh, well, we had a lot of good Q&A sessions with various folks on different topics. We had one with Jane. We had the BQ folks come out and talk to us about the phone. That was really cool. If you missed that, definitely go check it out. We also had a keynote from Mark to kick everything off on Monday. So a lot of good Q&A sessions as well. I guess those are my two highlights.
Yeah, I guess it was similar for me. Like, I really enjoyed the Q&A sessions because Mark, Jane, and the guy from BQ, can't remember his name. They really shared, gave insights into what their days are like, what they do, and so on. So that was super interesting, and I got the feeling that many folks enjoyed that. Apart from that, I was the co-track lead for Core, and although it ended up in some sessions where I didn't quite have an opinion on things like GCC 5 rebuilds, for example, I don't know. It was still super interesting, and it was great to see the interest in Snappy. Like, I can imagine that it confused quite a few people when they first heard of Snappy and that it was going to take over how we do things in Ubuntu. But I got the feeling that we could resolve a lot of those questions in the Q&A and in other sessions. And we also had some folks who had played around with Snappy already for appliances or just for tinkering around with it. And it was great to see that level of feedback. People really liked the idea and wanted to go with it. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, like I guess the next weeks are going to be a bit crazy. Like when everyone is recovering from yeah, writing blueprints and figuring out work items, because many, yeah, there's going to be a lot of work in the Trello boards for the Snappy folks. Um, and I'm happy I can contribute, like with documentation and figuring out what a community might look like, or what we can do for a Snappy community to be successful. It's really nice.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, also in one of the sessions with the core apps folks about the help app, and that was nice as well, because we had Daniel McGuire there who had some new ideas how the design for the app could look like, and how we could get people involved. So that was really, really nice as well. And that's what's going to dominate my next 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. And then I'll see where the Snappy guys stand.
Excellent. I didn't realize you had a help app session. That's lovely.
Yeah, it was good. There were a couple of things we talked about. Like one of them was like bugs we need to resolve because we just got the 0.1 version in. We know that it still has a couple of bugs. In terms of design, what we want it to look like. Also, how do we get more content in? So I also have a couple of work items that involve you. So we'll have to chat about the help app a bit. And then our idea was to bring it up with Joe and Richard. They're the product managers for the phone at Canonical. And it's their words what matters. So we're going to ask them what they want to see before this the help app is going to be default on the phone. Yeah, interesting times.
Awesome. So how about the Snappy desktop sessions? How were those received?
Yeah, it looked to me like like there are still loads and loads and loads of open questions. Some of the things involved stuff that has to be resolved in Miro. Other stuff has to be done in Snappy. For some things we just don't have answers yet. So it was more of like an exploratory session to figure out where we're going with this and what are the first steps going to be.
Right.
Because Snappy is just, I don't know, a few weeks old, basically.
It's a new little baby.
It is. But to me, it already looks like many people, especially folks who do thin clients, like for them, it's going to be just perfect to have like this bulletproof, minimal version of Ubuntu that's just going to update itself, always work, and do the right thing. Snappy is going to be, yeah, just the right thing for that use case, for example.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I know it's slightly out of order, but since we're talking about Snappy, I see Dragon 77's question.
Yeah.
So we may as well take that and answer that now before we dive into the rest. And he's asking, will Snappy support dynamic linking? He says, i.e. two applications sharing a single library. I heard you're working on some kind of memory deduplication that will try and emulate this behavior.
Exactly. So first of all, for those who don't know much about Snappy yet, it works with what we call Ubuntu Core, which is a minimal Ubuntu. So if you just install a basic Snappy system, there's not a lot on it. Like you can't SSH into it and then run VI and Emacs and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to work. It's not there. There's also no apt-get. Like it's just not there. There's just Snappy, and with Snappy you can install snaps from the store or framework snaps, although I'm not quite sure that is still the term people are using. Anyway, there are snaps which are going to provide a service, a functionality. That's what frameworks are, or maybe, yeah, what they are. So that's what you can specify, that for your Snap, you're going to need certain functionality. For example, Docker is a framework we have in the store right now. And there could be somebody who puts up a Bluetooth framework or something else. Like that's how it's going to work. Apart from that, if you need a special library to do something for your app, you will have to bundle it in your Snap. That's just the way it's going to work. So the question Dragon77 was asking is, what happens if multiple app authors start bundling the same libraries all over the place? Like, what are we going to do there? And there are plans, and the best person to talk about this is Michael Vogt, MVO on IRC, because he has a plan to do deduplication on the fly. So if you upload or download an app, it would figure out, okay, which files are included, and then it would exclude some of the files from being downloaded even. I think he has started looking into this, but it's not working yet. That's how it's going to work. And there's also going to make sense, especially if you consider that there's fat packages, so packages which include ARMHF, i386, and so on, like binaries from multiple architectures. Otherwise, the downloads are going to be just huge. So yeah, they are like the Snappy team is looking into this. They know that it's important. Maybe we should quickly mention before we get to the other questions. If you're watching this on ubuntuonair.com, just below the video feed where Nick and I are looking at you, there's this chat window. Just use your favorite nickname, hit the connect button, and then you can ask all the questions you want. And just make sure you prefix them with question and capital letters so we can more easily pick them up. Cool.
Yes, sorry about that. I should have mentioned that little blurb.
Yeah,
always handy. If you don't hit connect below, you're not gonna be able to correspond with us, which is sad. Well, we can't hear across the internet, sadly. So Butterfingers had a question, and we skipped him, and I said I'd get back to it, and now I need to find it again.
I've seen an impressive demo of LibreOffice running on Ubuntu Touch. Will that mean that many other apps should work, or is it the case that each app has to be ported?
So I think he's talking about running the different X applications on top of Unity 8, or in this case, Ubuntu Touch specifically. So probably one of Will's demos. So we had actually a couple interesting UOS sessions on this, and specifically, let me see what the names were.
I think it was legacy desktop apps, something.
Yeah, supporting legacy desktop apps. There you go. And the other one that you can check out if you just want to see some demos is the Unity 8 in desktop mode demo. And inside there was some more demos, but they also took some questions. So the short answer is you don't have to necessarily target each application, although support needs to be added for them. So I think, who was it? I'm forgetting his name, I'm sorry. Someone from the Mir team was demonstrating running the Ubuntu SDK on top of Mir inside of Unity 8, which is really cool. But they're targeting frameworks, so things like the GTK and the Qt backend plugins, that sort of thing, so that any application that depends upon that framework library just works. And they're finding, for the most part, as they fill in those holes and those gaps, that is the case. But there's always those applications that want to do things like make direct low-level X calls or that sort of thing that will, have to be worked around, shall we say, or support added for them. So I guess it's a bit of both. Many apps should work as is, other applications will need a little work to actually run on the device.
Yeah, and especially you're mentioning LibreOffice, like to make it work properly with Ubuntu Touch. Alan Pope and his Merriman, I can't remember who's working on the doc viewer right now. They're actually looking into pulling in LibreOffice functionality to parse documents and to make them work. But that's also quite a bit of work. It's not just execute LibreOffice, open file. Like it doesn't work like that. Yeah.
Okay. Next, Mike has a question. Another Snappy question. He says, "Have either of you played with Snappy or Ubuntu Core yet? And if so, what did you do?"
How about you?
Yeah, I'm sure Daniel's played with it. I'm sure he has some lovely stories. For myself, I have played with it, but nothing too terribly exciting. I downloaded it, started it up, and installed some applications, and that was about it. I'm really looking forward to trying out the Snappy Desktop. So I suspect that's where most of my time and efforts will be directed towards. If I had a device, and I thought long and hard about picking up a Raspberry Pi 2 or something else to play with. If I had a device, I would definitely be running it. It's very interesting for me because it does sort of fit that ethos of building a system exactly the way you want it. And so you have this very small piece, and then you can just sort of, it's like a Legos, So it's combining two things that you absolutely love, Legos and Linux. So it's just it works great. So I'm really excited, especially from a desktop perspective, and playing with these devices. But I've still got to get something so that I can do more with it.
Yeah, I basically did the same. Like downloaded images, installed it, played around, and updated the documentation while I was doing that. I also bought a BeagleBone Black, installed it on there, and it was nice to have the Snappy developer sitting next to me, where they just gave me serial cable and all the stuff that went with it, and showed me how to do crazy stuff. And as a first attempt to Snappify something, I tried to download or tried to port. What was it called again? It was some IRC proxy. But yeah, I first had to build it on ARMHF, then change ports, and then I don't know. I had to. It took me a bit longer than I expected in the beginning, but it was an interesting learning experience, and it also showed like the feedback I had afterwards was the feedback of others as well. Like, for example, if you if you have something on ARMHF, a binary, you run it, and you're not quite sure what are its dependencies, like which libraries am I using here in my change root, for example, but where do I get them from for my Snappy Ubuntu Core image? Like, how do I do that? That's something we need to automate, and this is also something which came up at Online Summit. So we're basically going to have like a shell, like something where you say run this command, and then it will tell you, okay, I couldn't run this because library X was missing, and you were missing some AppArmor rule to allow access to something else. And that's really nice that slowly these tools are coming up, and we're realizing, okay, this is a problem for people, so we have to fix it.
Oh, nice. So it'll have a did you mean if you get something wrong, or a you should install this, if you want to. Yeah. Okay.
More like a dry run this app command, and I see what it does. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So basically, you've been the guinea pig then for a lot of the Snappy stuff.
Yeah. Let's have others. Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. So, if it breaks, I'm just going to blame you then. Yes? Is that fair?
Right.
Okay. You agreed.
Yeah, I'll blame somebody else, but yeah, sure.
Okay, sure.
No, I'm happy. Like if you have any feedback, obviously I'm happy to hear about it.
Excellent. Okay.
It's Stuart who has a question for you.
Yeah, I think Stuart has a question for me. And he says, I know Balloons did some stuff demoing fat packages a while back. Has there been any movement on it so we don't have to glue them together by hand? And he says, I may have missed it at UOS. The short answer, Stuart, is sadly no. There hasn't been a ton of movement, although initially when I did it, there was some sticky business surrounding the review process and some other things, and Daniel made sure all the Click was happy with it and the Click review tools were happy, and the store worked great. So that's all good. There isn't the original bug to make these things automatically build for you is still there. So there hasn't really been a lot of traction. I did update the builds in the store for both the terminal and the file manager. Someone asked about those at UOS, and the terminal was didn't have an x86 build anymore, so I went ahead and added that back. I'm happy to build anything that, tossing it out there, I'm happy to build packages for anything that the source exists for, obviously, and that you want to see on your x86 version of Unity, Unity 8. So let me know if you can't build it or don't know how to build it or whatever. I'm happy to do it and publish it so it's there. But yeah, we don't have the auto magicness to do that yet. I think to some extent, maybe this is something that we should maybe broach with the SDK guys, to be fair.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, maybe you could explain how this generally works. Like what
Sure.
I do, what I know is that if you set up the SDK, you can set up a kit for ARMHF, for AMD64, whatever you have, and that will give you like a build environment for that architecture, right?
Yes. Yes.
And okay, and from there on, like if my app had some C++ stuff in there which needs to be compiled, how would it work from there on? Is there like the default template of the app not set up to do the right thing and I need to tinker with it, or do you know what's happening there?
Yeah, so the reason, I guess we should give a little more background. So what Stuart is asking about, by default, if you're an application developer, and you're writing an app, and you can choose in many cases to write the app completely in QML and having no compiled code at all, which is really awesome. And in that case, there's no issues. It runs across any platform you want. But some applications do require some compiled code. You just can't get away from it. And so when you do that, you naturally need to have compile for different platforms. So most of our application developers today target typically just the ARMHF platform, which is the architecture that all of the little lovely devices and phones, tablets, those sorts of things run on, as opposed to something that your PC architecture runs on, which would be x86, AMD64, something along those lines. So since basically Click generally just builds for one target at one time, that they just sort of leave it at that. So they create the Click package, they build it targeting the phone and publish it, and so then you never see it. So that's sort of the background on what the problem actually is. So the idea was, as Daniel was talking about, inside the SDK, they give you the ability to create what is called kits, as Daniel said, and essentially you can create little build targets for different architectures. Obviously, even though I'm building on my desktop, I can target the phone, and I can create a sort of virtualized environment to build within that will then run properly on a phone. So I can do that as well, even for other targets. If I want to target i386 or AMD64, in addition to ARM, I can do that, and I just need to create an additional kit inside the SDK and then build them. What's missing currently is an easy way to build all three at once and then put them into one package. And so if you're curious about doing this, you can go out and find my post on my blog, theorangenotebook.com. You'll find creating fat packages, or just ping us on IRC. I can point you out it if you're curious. But in a nutshell, what it boils down to is creating packages individually, and then taking them apart again and putting them back together. And you have to do a little hand tuning to do that when you play with the manifest file and to rebuild it. But it is possible. It does work. And so it's just something that we need to do to make AutoMagic and easy, so that an application developer can just build it the same way they build today inside the SDK and have a package that supports all those platforms. So I think the original bug that I filed, I threw it in IRC. Maybe where we went a little bit wrong with this is that I'm just asking for support on the command line tool, the click tool, to do this. But maybe it's something we could solve at a higher level than that. Maybe we could solve it inside the SDK and make it a bit easier. Because we can do it now. We could just have the SDK build it 3 times and do the little hand tuning that I'm talking about and put it back together. So maybe that's one way to get around it. Maybe that's an interesting way to go. So I'll take that upon myself. I'll ping. Although Stuart, I know you know the SDK folks as well. Feel free to toss your name in the hat. But I'll talk to Zoltan and Benjamin and see what they have to say about maybe just adding support with the tools as they are inside the SDK. So cool. I'm definitely all for it because, like I said, I love Unity 8 on the desktop. I had a goal last cycle to try and run it. I did on my laptop, not on my desktop. I never made the switch to totally dogfooding it. I'm making the same goal this cycle, so we'll see how far I get. Maybe at some point I'll be talking to you from my Unity 8 desktop. We'll see.
Brilliant. Cool. All right. We have a question from Dragon77. Does Mark Shuttleworth ever randomly come into one of Canonical's offices, look over someone's shoulder when he is working and say something like, "This is cool"? So it looks like Michael answered this on IRC already. The majority of people in Canonical don't work from an office, at least not a central office. We do have a couple of offices, but it's people from HR, from sales, from lots of teams that need to work together, the design team as well, and then we have some offices where engineers who work very tightly together. But as I said, the vast majority of us work from home or from co-working spaces, or I don't know where. So yeah, but that doesn't stop Mark from pinging people on IRC, having a chat with them, or talking to them at conferences and just figuring out what people are up to, what they've been working on. Like he's generally very interested in what's happening.
Let's see. What's next?
There was a question about Pi, but I don't think that was...
Oh, we were specifically instructed not to answer the question about Pi, I believe, Daniel.
Right, okay.
Okay, so...
read only part of the log, which is scanning for question, and then Pi, something, question. Right.
I'll say I like Apple Pear Pie. That's my favorite. Although it's hard to pick. All pies are pretty much good. You can't really go wrong. So. Right.
Yeah. I think I have a question. Like you work with the QA folks a lot. You work with the people who do continuous integration a lot. In an ideal world, if you had some desktop app, some some app which does something, how would people go about the testing process? Trying to make sure that from a QA perspective, they are, dotting all the I's and then crossing all the T's. Like, what would they need to do to make everything perfectly tested and QA'd?
Is this from a developer perspective?
Yeah, like somebody who starts working on some app, some desktop app or phone app, like what needs to happen?
Sure. So the probably the most important bits of testing that you can do. Well, I'm going to say, let me take a step back. The interesting thing about developing an application, I find that one of the most difficult pieces whenever you're writing something is actually releasing it. So you should set yourself up for success from the beginning by making a sort of release process. This doesn't have to be you don't have to create a huge CI process, a big continuous integration thing, set up a Jenkins server or automatic builds, all this stuff. None of that has to happen right off the bat. But what you should think about is how you're going to actually release it. What's your release criteria? And it could be something very simple. 3 things that you list down and say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to check this, and I'm going to run these tests. And if it's good, then I can release it. And I can release, I'm only going to release on Friday, whatever it is, whatever your criteria is. So you think about that when you're writing it down. And obviously, naturally, that's going to involve some form of testing. And it might be just okay, as long as I can go start the application and perform one simple task, that's my manual test, and I'm happy with it, and I'll ship it. But I would encourage you, obviously, to move beyond that. And the first sets of tests that you really look at are probably the ones that you get a lot of mileage on, that are the easiest to write, and those would be unit tests. And they cover the really, really basic methods and functions within your code. And so you want to target things that are crucial and that are low level. And what I like to do is actually look for edge cases, because edge cases are fun. So typically, I'll write a test with my expectations, and then I'll try and test things again with all sorts of crazy stuff to sort of massage those edge cases and see, if I pass a string to a method that never expects or should get a string, if I pass something that's out of bounds. Those are really common examples, but you can do other things as well. So that's a bit fun, but definitely the first step is having a nice set of unit tests that cover at least what you expect things to do. And that makes your release process then more and more comfortable. And for me, I really like the release early, release often mantra. And you can feel more comfortable with doing that by having a good set of tests. And then really you just build from there. The functional tests or acceptance tests are maybe the most fun for me to write because you get to test user interactions. And at that point, you can automate things, which is fun. So you can watch the computer use your application, if you will. You can go a bit crazy with those. Sometimes maintaining them can be fun. It can get tricky. So there are some tricks you can do. We have some wonderful tutorials on developer.ubuntu.com. They talk a bit about this. The one that I will mention is something called the page object model, which is something that Leo from the QA team encouraged us to check out a few years ago, and it comes actually from the Selenium community. So kudos to both those folks for sort of pointing this out. Anyway, the idea is that you break things down into pages and objects, page as an object. So you can think of any UI application. Obviously in Selenium, they're thinking about actual web pages, but even in a desktop application, you have a sort of a view, right? And you're changing views. So if you treat each one of those views as an object, then you can have different methods to interact with it. And by doing that, even if you sort of change the UI of what the view looks like, you probably don't change the functionality as often. And so that helps you to maintain tests as you go through UI changes. Because presumably your calculator application always has buttons, and you can always enter calculations and do these sorts of things. So while maybe your UI completely changes, the functionality of pushing buttons on a calculator doesn't. So your tests don't necessarily have to be completely rewritten when you change a UI. And so when you break it down architecturally in that way, that really helps you. So that's important to think about as you get higher and higher up the chain of tests. Your lower level test cases generally don't break. Making them as part of your build, they're quick and easy. So you probably don't need a build bot every time you hit go. And if you've got compiled code or uncompiled code, whatever it is, every time you hit make, you've got your unit test run, and it's 1/10 of a second or whatever, 2 seconds for them to run. And so it's no big deal to sort of see those as you go. The acceptance test I would save until you're actually ready to release, and so I would make that the last on your release criteria. But that's probably, again, from my perspective, how I would set up my application. The last thing I'll mention is a lot of people like test-driven development, so they want to be able to write their test cases before they write their code. I'm not necessarily a strict advocate of that. I think it's helpful to, what I'll often do is mock out a test case, but I'll write it in tandem. Maybe I'll mock the function out, mock the test case out, and vice versa. So you have these stubs. I code with a lot of stubs, we'll put it that way, right? Just as your ideas are flowing. And so it's like, to be implemented later, whatever it is. And I find that helps kickstart things. But definitely I wouldn't necessarily be a strict advocate of you must write a test before you write a function. Sometimes, it's the other way around. Whichever is easier for you to stub out and sort of think through the process is best. So
cool. Yeah, that gives me a lot to think about. I asked the question because with a good reason, because we want to add more tests to the help app, which is an HTML5 app, and I'm still wondering user tests, like unit tests we already have for stuff like the translations or making sure that links don't break, that kind of stuff. But I still have to figure out how we're going to do some actual click this, then do something else, and then how we're going to do that. No idea.
Yeah, see, for me, it stems from the release process. You have, so taking the help application, for example, you have things that you want the user to be able to do. Obviously, users will use the application in other ways that you don't necessarily think of, but you want to cover at least the basic use cases, which is to say, I created this app so that someone can have a question and get an answer, right? And this is what I expect them to do: fire the app up, click here, and then get an answer. And so those are obviously very straightforward test cases. As time goes on, what you'll find is that in addition, you'll add new workflows, because you'll add features and be like, okay, now I want a user to be able to do this thing. But I think those user stories will always remain kind of small. What you'll mostly add to your automated tests, I think, are regression checks. So users doing things that you didn't necessarily expect at first, and then you can add an automated test to make you feel better about releasing in the future that you have not broken it again. And so that's the natural growth for me from an automated high-level test case is regression tests. So. And
is Selenium what you would recommend for such an HTML app? Or
we just had a session at UOS, which you should check out. Alex from the web apps team helped us out with this, and it was called Testing HTML5 Applications.
Nice.
Yes,
cool.
And so we covered the whole gamut about how to do this and gave our thoughts. The short answer is you can use Selenium WebDriver with Autopilot, and that would be the recommendation.
Whoa, cool. Do we have a small example somewhere of this?
I'm working on a guide that'll go up this week on developer.uwenta.com. So soon. Well, I said go up this week. Now I'm really paying myself in the corner. I'm working on it this week. It'll go up when it's done.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm happy to be your guinea pig.
But yes, we have an example. If anyone opens the Ubuntu SDK now and you start a new HTML5 project, you'll get a complete test setup exactly the way we'd recommend you do it.
Awesome.
So just do that for now. Check it out. And there's a little documentation in there to help get you started.
Will do. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Yes.
I was being selfish. I'm very sorry. We're going to get to the other questions now. Okay. We have 10 minutes left. Better be quick. Okay. Butterfingers. What has customer feedback been like for the phone? Any areas that emerge that need attention? For me personally, the notification area is a little cumbersome. Yes, I think that was the most asked question for Rodrigo, the guy from BQ. Um, Rodrigo he said that customers have been really happy with the phone. Of course, there were some people who remarked that WhatsApp was missing, but they were informed of that a bit earlier on. Um, no, generally people have been very happy with the feedback. There's also a good bunch of fixes going to land soon. When is the do you know when the OTA is landing?
Yeah,
Soon.
soon.
Cool. Yeah. So lots of stability fixes and speed improvements and lots of good stuff.
Is tethering going to be in that one? I think it
Which one?
might be. They were talking about um, tethering, which was a requested feature, USB tethering. Yeah.
Nice. I think there was an article on Web Update or Softpedia or something, which goes into detail about all the stuff that's going to be in that update. So you might want to check that out. But generally, people were super happy with the feedback. That's what Rodrigo from BQ told us. Next question. Dragon77 asked, how long do you plan to continue to support Nexus devices? I think the same question was somebody asked Mark the same question, and he deferred to Rick to this. For now, I would just say there's no concrete answer for this, but as loads of developers have Nexus devices right now, and a lot of Nexus devices also in the labs where a lot of automated testing is happening. I think it's safe to assume that they're going to stick around for a while. Another question from. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say anything?
No, I agree. Yep.
Okay, cool. Next question from Stuart about QA. Do you have a zillion failing acceptance tests? There should be, surely, a whole bunch of test checking things like pasting into the web browser, which doesn't work at the moment, but should. Who establishes when these user features are actually fixed to be working? LP bugs should check the tech stuff, but not the actual user experience.
Okay, so good question, right? Obviously, this is probably something that a unit test may or may not check. I mean, may or may not be able to actually check. It's sort of interesting. You can have all these tests testing things at a low level, and so that again, given the right inputs and outputs, everything works. When you get in the real world and you put it all together, sometimes things don't connect the way you think they should, and they break, which is why acceptance tests are really useful. So to Aquarius's question, he's wondering if we don't have like a zillion failing acceptance tests. The QA and CI guys often have failing acceptance tests. That's something they fight on a daily basis, and they do find bugs for sure. That said, I don't know if I can speak specifically about the web browser and what its test suite looks like. However, this does tie back into what we were talking about just a moment ago with Daniel. Since, for instance, the pasting things in a web browser does not work, my expectations would be there's a bug file, and then, which presumably there is, and then once that bug is addressed and fixed, as part of that merge, I would want to see an acceptance test to make sure that that would never happen again. And if it's written well, hopefully no variant of that would ever happen again either. But sometimes things come back to bite you, and you fix you fix it only in this silo, and it happens again slightly differently. But ideally, you can cover it so that literally nothing around that area is going to happen again. Pasting will always work no matter how you do it. So you sort of check that off. So hopefully that is what's happening in that case. But I can't speak specifically for the web browser. Obviously, patches are always welcome. At least bug reports are. But you're correct that there are not a zillion, but there's definitely failing acceptance tests.
Right. There's a question from the entire Inter. I may have missed this, but has there been any word on how scopes will be done on the Snappy desktop? I think it was discussed in some online summit session, but I can't remember which, and I can't remember what the outcome was, so sorry. Question from Chloe Wolfie Girl. Will Ubuntu Touch keep a big focus and lower-end hardware, and will it be much better for lower-end phones than current versions of Android? I think that it was a good idea to pick the Nexus 4, and that we always compare things on how it works on the Nexus 4, because it keeps Ubuntu working well on lower powered phones. But I can imagine that a lot of hardware builders are going to be interested to ship Ubuntu on a high powered, on a a really modern phone, and have loads of ideas on how to make it work there. So I think it's more going to be a question for the hardware manufacturers than us. We want Ubuntu to work well on every device, basically.
Yeah. For those of you who may have missed it, but Mark announced talking about shipping a device for having the Snappy desktop this year, which is really huge and really cool. And naturally, you can imagine that you're going to need a little bit more hardware than what we have now to do that. So the focus that we've had on the lower end hardware will make sure that experience is still a good one. Obviously, smartphones have come a long way, but they're still not quite the same power in my phone as what's sitting next to me here. So it's still a bridge that has to be crossed, and so the focus that we have on low-end hardware will make sure that we can keep that experience tight and actually usable.
Yeah. Liven asked, can we hope that people will get Office Suite on Ubuntu Touch soon? I think we answered that earlier. Question from Fuzz. We see that in Op Store appeared scopes in Chinese. This shows that release of MX4 is really near. That's not for us to announce, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be ages until new phones come out. But yeah, Meizu is going to let you know when the phones are available.
That's correct.
When will I be able to install Snappy Ubuntu Desktop and easily install apps such as Firefox and LibreOffice? Question from Chloe Wolfie Girl. People are working on Ubuntu Desktop images and also working on porting LibreOffice over. So that's work in progress. That's definitely planned for this cycle, but I can't tell you if it's going to be days or weeks until you can try that out and play around with it.
Right. I asked the question at US actually about when the first images would switch to Snappy, and no one knew for sure. Wiley just opened for development, so give it a bit. That's what I would say before we start seeing some images.
And then there's another question from the entire internet, I guess. Is the OwnCloud integration on the BQ phone any good, i.e. for contacts, photos, and calendar? I'm afraid I don't know.
OwnCloud. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking. I got SoundCloud in my head.
No. Yeah.
So I thought SoundCloud stores my contacts. When does this happen?
I mean, all your friends who are musicians, right?
Yeah. Just my those contacts, but photos, calendar. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I've OwnCloud. I think the OwnCloud 7 is out now, if I remember correctly. I've played around with it once or twice. I've even installed it on a personal server. I've just never committed to using it, so no idea how it works with the phone.
But the good news is there's a lot of people who are very interested in it on the Ubuntu phone mailing list. So I would suggest to just ask there. Maybe somebody can post a screenshot or explain what the current state of things is. But as there's quite a bit of overlap between the Qt/KDE community and the OwnCloud community, I'm sure you're going to find lots of people there who are interested in making this work. And maybe you can even help out.
Yes, I was going to say, try it out. Let us know. Then we'll know how it works.
Right. Cool. Yeah, and that's it. That's all the questions we had up until now. So there's one thing which Jose pays us for saying, which is make sure that you subscribe, circle, find all the Ubuntu On Air social media accounts on the internet, including YouTube, Twitter, Google+, and make sure you follow them. That way you're also going to learn which new shows happened since last time and when the next shows are going to be, and you can watch what happened in the meantime. Right.
All right.
I think that's it. Yeah, next week you're going to probably see somebody else of our team. And yeah, let us know if you have any suggestions what we should cover, who we should interview and bring on the show. I think that's one of the promises we actually made for this cycle, right? To get more other people on.
Yes. Although I'm going to say that was an Alan Pope promise.
Okay. We'll try to live up to Alan's promises then.
Well, I don't know if I can say I can live up to Alan's standards, but.
Oh yeah, right. We'll try.
Yes, we'll definitely try. And as always, if anyone is interested or wants to know something specific about a topic, we will happily do our best to bring someone on. It's how many of our guests have appeared here in the past. So if there's something you're really, really curious about and we didn't answer sufficiently, just push us on the issue a little bit. We'll bring someone in who can answer you a bit more thoroughly, and we're happy to do it. So
cool. All right.
Yes, thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for your questions.
Indeed. Daniel, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll see you all next week, same time, same place. Cheers, guys.
See you.